Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. Super late on a Thursday night. We are coming at you guys talking about a pretty nice Friday night slate here in the NBA. Nate, definitely want to make sure you like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. We're bringing you these game videos each and every weekday of this regular season, as well as our player props video. This one's going to be about those Knicks and the Bucks in Milwaukee tonight. Pretty big spread for the Bucks as favorite there. We'll jump into all those things. Also want you to head to thelines.com. Have plenty of great written content on there from Nate and the gang all NBA season long. Also have our great odds finder tool on there. You can go ahead and make sure that you are shopping all of those NBA lines to the best of your ability and those player props this NBA season. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into that slate for Friday night and get into the Knicks and Bucks.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the top of the lines here. Hawks are -6 at Detroit. Another one of those home and home sets that the NBA scheduled here early. Charlotte's -2.5 at Orlando. Cleveland +5.5 at Boston. Definitely intrigued by that game. Not really trying to bet on it, though. Pacers +6.5 at Wizards. The Sixers +1.5 at the Raptors. That's another immediate rematch. The game we're looking at here, Knicks are +7 at the Bucks. Lakers +8.5 at the Wolves. Bulls -4.5 at the Spurs. Jazz +8 at the Nuggets. They smacked the Nuggets in their opener, so some revenge narrative there. Another game we'll have a video up about. Rockets are +5.5 at the Blazers, who sadly lost Dame Lillard for a couple weeks now. And the Pelicans are +7 at the Red Hot Suns. Yeah, Knicks were +6 when we kind of got the opener line here. And I kind of said to you, that's too high. And now it's even higher. So fantastic if you are not necessarily buying into the Bucks as a juggernaut here. I mean, they've only played 3 games. One was against a team that literally can't get a rebound. One was against the freaking Rockets. And one was against the Sixers, who have zero team chemistry at this point in the season. So the fact that they're the number 1 defense in the league has a lot to do with the opponent, the quality of shots that the opponent is able to produce. And this Knicks team is suddenly not your father's Knicks. I mean, I guess not your brother's Knicks. They were good 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whenever exactly. Dad was watching the NBA. But they are a nice half-court offense in that spirit with Jalen Brunson on the trigger. They're 5th in offensive rating, which is an incredible turnaround from a Tom Thibodeau-led team. It's really a Jalen Brunson-led offense and a Tom Thibodeau defense, I'm sure. Almost probably have an OC on that staff somewhere. But in any case, yeah. I mean, normally I'm a little concerned when your things run through your point guard and you go up against Drew Holiday. I think Jalen's pretty unflappable, though. Like, I don't really see him. I mean, he did have 3 turnovers in each of his last 2 games, 0 in the previous 2. But he's just very in control of the game. And the biggest thing for the Bucks is they're super thin, aside from Giannis. Brook, who is playing a key role in that defense, we don't know where his health is overall. And the reason we like them to beat the Nets is because they had been off for 4 days prior to that game. Now they're on normal rest here. So are the Knicks, but the Knicks are very youth-laden here. RJ, Cam Reddish, anybody you want to throw in there basically is going to have good legs here on normal rest. They're going to be charged up for this one, with the Bucks being your perennial favorites here in the East. And you look at what the Bucks did last year in this spot, 15 and 28 against the spread as home favorites, failing to cover by 4 points per game. That's really the key. I mean, that's key, but really the key for me here is they went 24 and 25 straight up against teams with winning records. And the Knicks now are a winning team. Let's not, call them the New York Jets or anything like smoke and mirrors. This is a winning basketball team right now, especially early in the season. And I don't think the Bucks are going to be able to cover. I actually kind of like the juice you can get at plus 225 for the Knicks to just go in there and pull off this win.
Whoa. God, you're getting me all kind of excited talking about the Knicks. I mean, they do have a point guard, man. And
more fade the Bucks. It's more. I don't
okay.
hold your horses.
All right, okay. I'm sorry. I'll temper my response to how excited I should be about the Bucks based on what you're saying here, because I hear what you're saying. It's a little bit more about the Bucks not being tested up to this point. You not necessarily trusting where they're at. They've also got a number of injuries that we know are key. Obviously, Chris Middleton is where you start, but obviously there's a couple other guys as well, and Pat Connaughton, Joe Ingles, who they're also severely missing. Man, right? Definitely. So I agree with you on that. I want to temper my expectations on the Knicks in general. You're just getting me excited because, like, I don't know, man. Like, we're finally talking about a team where even when the Knicks were good at any point over the last 2 seasons, it felt like smoke and mirrors. It felt like the first season we were like, this is what Tibbs does. He comes in, he takes a team who was 15, 20 games below 500. He just adds all the same guys that he's always added on every team he's coached in Taj Gibson, Derrick Rose, and guys like that. And he just he plugs them in, and boom, you've got 43 wins in an Eastern Conference that was crappy as hell 2 years ago, right? So then, everyone gets, it still felt like a false narrative. You also had the narrative of them that they still kind of have this year, which is they have a great opponent field goal percentage, especially in 3-point line. But when you look at their opponent's true shooting and things of that nature, they're getting wide open shots and just missing them. And that's been the case for the Knicks a bit. But look, if that happens a few years in a row, you kind of start to realize they're forcing guys who they don't want to shoot to be the ones shooting. So let me start by let me backtrack and say, I love an under in this game a bit more than I like the Knicks even to cover, because you talk about the Bucks not being tested. The Knicks have lost to the Grizzlies and then beaten the Hornets, Pistons, and Magic, right? So let's also settle down a bit on what we're talking about there. Jalen Brunson looked great. Julius Randle has looked great, not only just because he's been having a better season, because Jalen Brunson's helping him make him look great, right? With the ways that he's able to get Julius into his spots on the floor. Now, it's also leading, and I've watched all of their games, so I know this for a fact, plus the stats back it up. There's no assist going on for this team. There's a ton of unassisted field goals that are going on. They're not moving the ball well. And if you don't do that against the Bucks, we talk about how Budenholzer's Bucks, their defense, they give up 3-point attempts. They give up 3-pointers made. But that's because they're forcing you to shoot them, and you're not getting anything once you get inside of that 3-point line from this Bucks defense. So they're going to let guys chuck, knowing that that's fine. They've got guys to get on the shooters. They get the guys to shoot who they want. So I like the underman because everything that the Knicks do well on offense, the Bucks do well to guard. That's points in the paint. Number 1 for the Knicks this year, 4th best paint defense to have the Bucks. Both teams are bottom 2 in percentage points from the free throw line because they're not really attacking the rim, despite getting a lot of second chance points. The Knicks are anyway. Number 1 at second chance points. Milwaukee's 3rd in limiting opponents' second chance points because they have the 3rd best defensive rebound percentage. So I just, all those things that the Knicks do, it's not really about moving quickly for them. It's about, efficient offenses and pretty good ball movement, or at least pretty good isolations that they're able to create for guys like RJ going to the rim and guys like Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, who are all 3 very, very good at taking their guy off of the dribble in mismatches that they consistently have. They're not going to have those mismatches against Milwaukee, who, like I said, does everything to guard that. Lastly, for that under that I love, 21st in pace this year for the Bucks. We're talking about a team that we know they've been top 5 in pace the last 3 seasons with Bood before this year, 3rd last year in pace. That's just clearly, I think, a clear result of them not, and really adaptation to the fact that they don't have Chris Middleton. 117 offensive rating the last 3 seasons when Chris Middleton's on the floor, 112 when he's not. They know that they're less efficient. It behooves them to create less possessions and really just allow themselves their defense to really just lead the way right now. And that's why 224.5, only 1 out of their 4 matchups even reached 222 last year. All 3 of the other ones went under for them. So I do like an under a lot here. I want to pick the Knicks to cover the Bucks at home. I don't know that you can rely on last year's home record for the Bucks as the true indication of what's going to happen this year, playing as home favorites this year. So I'm still a little bit tentative on the spread. I would take the Knicks before I took the Bucks for sure. But I just love under 225 more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you because what I'm fading here is the Bucks offense and how thin they are around Giannis, how dependent they are. In these last 2 games, he has a 44% usage rate, and he's had to score 44 and 43 for them to put up any sort of respectable NBA total. Since Thibodeau took over the Knicks, he's averaging under 28 a game, shooting 56%, which, for anyone else is great. But for Giannis, I don't know if that gets it done. when you have no Middleton, no Connaughton, no Ingles, whatever else you need on the wing. I'm surprised that the Bucks aren't worse than 17th in 3-point percentage right now. They shot 28% against the Nets in their last game. They made the Nets look like a competent defensive team for a while, which is the real shocker. And we were like, oh, were we wrong about this? We thought, Giannis would just roll to the rim. And eventually in the third and fourth quarter, he did. And so, I mean, the Knicks certainly have more backbone than the Nets at this point. They have more youthful exuberance. And I hear your point that they've beaten up on 3 bad teams as they're getting their feet wet here in the season. I'm not trying to suddenly slot them into the top 5 seeds in the East. I just think in this spot, they're going to be competitive enough. And we're going to see what the Bucks have, basically, that they haven't been put in a spot where they have to really grind it out. And I think it's going to be close.
That's totally fair. One thing that I keep having come up in my mind too when we talk about the Knicks, though, or at least the Bucks not being the same team at home, is they did just wipe the floor with the Rockets, who I understand not the best team in the league. Obviously, a team still putting it together with a bunch of young guys. But like last season, the reason they were so bad against the spread is because when they would play someone like the Rockets, they'd have a 10 or 11 point spread because that's what they were beating teams by the year before at home, right? They averaged like a 10-point margin of victory at home the season before. And so last year, that's what the spreads were at, unless you were a very good team playing the Bucks at home.
And you know what their margin of victory was last year? 4 points. So
right.
7.
Right. But my point is they just blew out the Rockets by 20 at home a few nights ago. Just one indication, not a huge sample size. We'll see what it means. It could mean nothing, obviously, but that's the only place where I am a little bit hesitant to even bet on a spread here. Like I said, love the total. Not mad at the Knicks with 7.5 points by the time people are watching this. Who knows if it keeps rising? So Nate, let's jump into those and get into Rockets Blazers.
Yeah, nice big slate. We got a couple more of these home and home sets that the NBA has been rolling out here early, including Atlanta at Detroit. +6 are the Pistons at home. Hornets -2.5 at Magic. The Cavs +5.5 at the Celtics. Couple of good 3-1 teams there. Pacers are down to +5 at the Wizards. That was 6.5 a minute ago. Sixers are +1.5 at Toronto after losing to them 2 nights ago. The Knicks +7 at the Bucks. We do cover that game in a separate video for you guys. The 0-4 Lakers +8.5 at the love to stick it to them Timberwolves. The Bulls -4.5 at Spurs. Jazz +8 at Nuggets. They blew out Denver in their opener, so we'll see what happens in that rematch. The Pelicans +7 at the Suns, and then we get to this game. Yeah, it was +4.5 at the opener. Now +5.5 is Houston, and the totals dropped to 225 from 226 as bettors are kind of evaluating how to treat this game without Damian Lillard. It's strange with Houston. I mean, I guess we'll start with them that they just are dead last in fast break points this year. They were kind of an over machine last year. They still don't defend anybody, and they're still 8th in pace, but they haven't been scoring enough in this limited sample size. Other teams are getting back in transition and guarding them, and that's why they're 1-4, and they've really only been competitive against Utah, which was tired after their nice 3-0 start. So yeah, I still look at Houston as an absolute doormat here. I mean, as one of the worst teams in the league that is sinking to the bottom intentionally. And last year they didn't do much as underdogs, 30-43 against the spread with an average margin of victory -10.5. So I am on Portland here. I mean, this is a classic stars out, bets up situation for us. You see it all the time in the NBA. We just saw it with the Pelicans beating the Mavs on Tuesday, et cetera, et cetera. This is the first game without Dame. The Blazers were obviously without Dame almost the entire season last year, but they were also without a ton of other guys. And even before they went into full tank, where they lost 2 late ones against the Rockets, where Trenton Watford might have been the best guy in the lineup there for the Blazers in those games.
Remember that.
They crushed the Rockets 125-110. Mr. Anthony Simons leading the way. He went for 27 and 6 dimes, shot 11 of 17 from the floor. And, that was kind of part of his coming out party since January without Dame. averaged nearly 23 points per game with a 112 offensive rating. He's fully capable of picking up the slack here. I mean, he one of the best step back 3-pointers in the game at this point. Just an absolute electric package. And the biggest thing for the Blazers is what they did to upgrade on the wing. I mean, it wasn't a fluke that they started 4-0. And not necessarily with Dame just totally taking over, although he had some big games in there. It's what Jeremy Grant, Josh Hart, even guys like Nasir Little and Shaedon Sharpe off the bench have been able to bring to the table. And Nurk putting up a 106 individual defensive rating as well. They're number one in both free throws attempted and allowed, just controlling the paint. That was the biggest bugaboo for Nurk, is that he would get into foul trouble. He's protecting the rim without fouling. And Houston right now, they're 26th in offensive rating. I don't know where they're going to reliably get their points. They're 29th inside the arc. So if they're not going to hit you with a barrage of threes, they probably can't hang in this game. And Portland has taken care of business against them. Aside, again, throwing out those 2 tank games, won 7 of their previous 8 and covered in 6 of those against the Rockets.
Yeah, man. This isn't last year's Portland Trailblazers, however you want to phrase that. And Jeremy Grant's a huge part of that. He hasn't gotten the usage rate. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him on offense without Dame, but we know what we're going to get from Anthony Simons on offense without Dame. Even this year when he's been playing with Dame, averaging, by the way, still the most minutes on the team, or second most basically to Josh Hart, Anthony Simons. But that's because Josh Hart is like the actual perfect player to play off of a guy like Dame and to play in a lineup with a 4 like Jeremy Grant and a big like Nurk. So he's going to continue to get those starters minutes, but the usage rate for Simons on the court with all these guys is still 24%, right? With a ton of guys that Dame likes to play with and play, and pass the ball to. But when you're playing with Dame and his usage is at 33%, it's where you want it, because they've told us they're not trying to lose this season. So my main point is, I really just love those player props. I love the 5.5 too. I want to talk about a total, and I want to talk about an over, but I like the defense that Portland has shown, just because last year couldn't get any worse, right? They couldn't have been any more of a turnstile from giving up 3-pointers to allowing guys to get to the rim, right? And that's the modern day NBA. You can't guard either of those places. That's fine. There's 4 teams trying to shoot mid-range jumpers, right? And it's whichever team KD is on, whichever team DeMar DeRozan is on. So, there's and Chris Paul. So there's plenty of other ways, I think, for Portland to score this year, what I mean to say is a lot of ways for them to stop other players from other teams from scoring. Nurk has been staying in the game. You talk about his individual defensive rating being, so good, like with 106 or so, which is incredible for a guy who, when he was on the floor, his defensive rating individually wasn't always too bad. He would definitely get beat up because there aren't that many true centers that would, that he could stay on the floor and actually guard. And when he did, they were good enough to beat the crap out of him, like Embiid and Jokic. But this year he's not fouling. He's staying on the court, and I do think it says something that you finally have another guy that's Jeremy Grant, that's 6'10", who's putting up his own. Look, he's putting up about a 112 individual defensive rating, which you'd love to see be better from a guy who's had Defensive Player of the Year nominations before. But he's guarding the best player on the other team every single game, and that's where he's expending a lot of his energy, which probably leads you to not having as high of an efficiency or usage rate on offense. So I'm talking about what the Blazers do, because the Rockets, they are a team that I hate to bet against, because every now and again last year they would just burn you, because it was almost like they were too ignorant to know that they shouldn't win the game, and they were just going blindly from 3. Kevin Porter or Jalen Green obviously just going off. That's what you're worried about. But like I said, with the way that the Blazers have paid a lot more attention to defense this season, and limiting, like I said, the 3-pointer percentage and the points in the paint, which they're at least top half in the league in both those things, which they were bottom 2 or 3 in both of them last year. So I feel much better about the way they're playing D enough to cover 6 points against one of, if not the worst team in the NBA this year.
Yeah, Jalen Jr., I like that, because Jalen Brunson is his father at this point.
Yeah,
but it is all Jalen Green for the Rockets, and if he's not cooking, they're going to fall behind real quick. He did have 2 nice games against the Portland tank lineup, prior to that, his first 2 games against Portland were pretty ugly. Averaged 13, shot 35% from the floor, 30% from 3, and then a negative 27 total rating there. So I think they do know how to defend him. Chauncey Billups does have. I mean, it's not the hardest coaching assignment to say we got to stop Porter and Jalen Green here tonight. And then Alperen Şengün, he could just give his lunch money to Nurk at this point. Like you trying all that cute stuff with the over the head passes. Nurk just is fresh off shutting down the 2-time MVP. So I mean, Portland's defense, I think, is where we lean here. That's why I think the over is pretty competitive number. I'm not really trying to go with it. I wouldn't be surprised at all, though, the way the Rockets play is if Portland puts up 125, maybe I would think about their team total, because I think they have enough offensive firepower to look great here, even after losing their leader.
Yep, we're totally aligned and have been on Portland from the jump. I love the stars out, bets up for them. Similarly to why I was scared of taking that Pelly's game against Dallas, is like the Pelly's had players that could step up and would be getting more points and more stats if they were given the time without, guys like Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson playing. This is Dame's team. I just told you about his 34% usage rate. That's what you want it to be. But Josh Hart, Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic, and even the way Winslow's playing this season, which is incredible, 102 individual defensive rating for Justice Winslow in 25 minutes a game, dude. So I'm like very proud of him because I've been waiting for him to be somewhat good. Shaedon Sharpe as well. We've talked about him with a plus 11 net rating individually for him in 5 games in 16 and a half minutes. So there's a bunch of guys almost like waiting to just get their shine here. This is a wonderful stars out, bets up bet at 5.5 against even if Jalen Green goes off. This is gonna be a team effort for the Blazers, I think, coming out strong. So don't let me down, Portland. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into our first prop of this Friday night slate.
Yeah, give me Mr. Maxey here with the Sixers facing the Raptors once again. It's part of a fate of James Harden, really, in this matchup. I mean, what he's not able to do against the Raptors with their length, it was sort of the start of his unraveling in the playoffs last season. He shot 36% or worse in 4 of their 6 playoff games. And so enter Maxey, who shot 51% in that series, who played 42 minutes and averaged 21 points, 4.8 rebounds, 4.8 assists. So now, coming off a 31-5-6 game against the Raptors on a 30% usage rate, played 43 minutes. His prop still pretty generous here, 18.5 points. Definitely would hit that, and the 25.5 PRA isn't far behind. If you're going to play 43 minutes, like you're going to stumble into some peripheral stats when you have the ball in your hands that much, and the Sixers need him like so badly to inject some life into this, to inject some transition. And especially in this matchup, because Toronto, right, they're playing Scotty Barnes at point guard. Like everybody is so big and therefore too slow to deal with a guy like Maxey. They can deal with Harden. Harden's just going to dance in place. Like I remember when Josh was on the Maccabi Olympic team and some guy would dribble back and forth and he'd just be like, okay, where are you? Yeah, shout out wherever that guy is from New Jersey with all the flashy dribbling. But I digress. Tyrese Maxey, a matchup problem for Toronto, averaging nearly 23 points and 6 assists in his last 3 regular season. So give me his props here again tonight.
Man, it's so true. And what James Harden dribbled the ball, like they were talking about on the TNT, post game, like 500 times against the Raptors last game or something ridiculous. It was brutal to watch. Like something's got to give, dude, because if Doc Rivers doesn't realize he's about to have a mutiny on his hand, right? It's like you've got like 5 guys on this team. Maxey's one of them. Tobias Harris is one of them. Bunch of other guys can fall into the category of like, wait, we were here first. We were here. We were good. And now you're playing guys like Danwell House because you're just recreating the Rockets of the Northeast from a few years ago. Like, what are we doing? So I mean, I don't know if Doc's always been smart enough to know when he's going to lose his job. So, I mean, he's on the hot seat, man. And if you don't realize that a guy like Tyrese Maxey playing off of Embiid, man, we know what they did together last year, how much better Maxey at least was when he's playing with Embiid, and how much better he can continue to get if they give him that usage rate like they gave him the other night. But it was too late. Most of that came in the second half for Maxey, and it was a lot of watching Harden dribble for a lot of that first and third quarters. So let's move on to something hopefully a little bit more fun to talk about. My Jalen Brunson and those Knickerbockers taking on the Bucks, who we talked about in that game video. I know Nate likes them to cover the 7. I don't hate it. I do love an under there, but 6.5 assists at plus 120 on DK. I mean, they are baiting us a little bit to take it after he's coming off of a 13 assist game in 41 minutes against the Charlotte Hornets, playing at light speed, where the Hornets all game, including Dennis Smith Jr., who just did not stop sprinting around. But that all said, it's Jalen Brunson, and this is what their offense is going to be predicated on, right? And so the one game that he hasn't had 9 assists so far this season that they've played was a game where he didn't really need to play too much against the Detroit Pistons, and I believe he actually ended with 9 in that one as well. So he's got, I think 3 of the 4 games, or he's gotten at least that this year. We love to bring up what he does when he's not playing with Luka, and look, man, he's proven that that's really who he is. It's not like he was just some dude that played off of one of the best offensive players of our generation in Doncic. It's also like, no, this dude was able to play a little bit of your turn, my turn, but not in just it's my turn to score versus your turn to score. It's my turn to facilitate versus yours. And so he's taken that role over here, and he's able to get Julius Randle into his spots. I said it earlier, they have a few too many instances where they were just setting up guys for post-ups or for ISOs, rather than the last couple games where Jalen's had 9 and 13 assists. And it's because of the fact that he's setting guys up in position to score, not position to take their guy off of the dribble. So following you big time on the Jalen for plus 120, definitely following you for 7 assists for him.
Yeah, I mean, if the Knicks are going to play team ball, that's something the Bucks haven't dealt with yet. I mean, they faced the Nets, who are the most ISO heavy team. They faced the Rockets, who are just freewheeling gung ho, and they faced James Harden and the Sixers, who we just got done talking about. And Harden had 9 assists in that game, right? Because the ball was in his hands constantly. Brunson has the ball in his hands constantly, and he's a better decision maker than Harden. And the last 2 times he faced the Bucks without Luka in the lineup, 11 assists, 8 assists. And that was when the Bucks were more at the height of their powers than they are right now. They're thin on the wing. So I think it's fair. I think you want to take the 28.5 PRA to be safer about it. That makes sense too, because he'll probably score about 20 points. I think 18.5 is his points prop as well. Moving on to a guy we also talk about in the game videos here, Anthony Simons, who, of course, Dame out. He used to be put your money on CJ, and here's the new CJ. Guy averaged 23 and 5 with Dame out since last January. In his career without Dame, I mean, it's kind of skewed because he played a lot of games as a rookie that barely played. But, well, I'll just go with what he is without Dame. 25% usage rate, 19 points, nearly 5 assists, and shooting 42% from 3. He's minus 140, Josh, to hit 4 threes. So that's a nice chunk of points right there. The prop is 23.5 in terms of his points. I don't mind the 31.5 PRA either. But I would definitely take those over the threes because the odds are so low. And Houston playing with plenty of pace, giving up plenty of easy buckets, and the second most assists and the 5th most points to point guards thus far. I mean, what's not to like?
I love it. I mean, he's going to get 18 points off of 3-pointers, to be honest with you. I mean, I believe I called him Anthony Curry Simons last season at one point because he was like 5.5 for 11 from 3 over the course of like a month when he just went bananas last year, right when Dame was like, yo, I'm out for the season. And then it was Simons was like, cool, I got this. I'm going to drop 30 points in like 4 out of 5 games as soon as you're out or whatever it was. So, I love Mr. Simons in this one. He also seems to love to play against other young guards who don't play much defense, as do the Rockets not do. So, last one here, I'm going to go with a Marcus Smart under on his points and his rebounds specifically. He's still diming up a bit, to be honest with you, about 6 assists a game this season. But it's really, for me right now, there's so many other guys that are doing so many things, specifically rebounding for this team. Jason Tatum is just turned into LeBron James from his Miami Heat days so far this season, in the way that he's getting all of the stats and really also controlling the offense. It looks really, really great. He's playing Cleveland. That's the best defense when it comes to playing point guards. In case you were wondering, this season and last season they were almost as good, but this season really they're the number one in terms of limiting point guards in points, rebounds, and assists. Meaning they give up the fewest in all of those categories, as well as 3-pointers made. So that's something that is not going to bode well for Mr. Smart, who he's playing the starters minutes, which is also why his usage rate is at about 15% this season when he's on the floor. Whereas you look at a guy like Malcolm Brogdon playing 23 minutes versus Marcus Smart's 35, but his usage rate's at 25. Right, for when he's on the floor, because he's the general of the second unit, and he's getting some time at the end of the games, although it hasn't been too close in enough of their games at the end really for them to need someone like Brogdon to really control the floor. So haven't seen quite as much as that, but I just don't think that it's there for him. He's averaging about 2 boards a game this season, and you look at his number versus the Cavs historically going back to last season, also averaging about 2 boards a game. So the 16.5, he's about averaging about 3.5 less than that this season already, playing against a team who's so good against point guards as well. The juice is there for it.
I mean, speaking as somebody who listens to Celtics fans all the time and cries for Marcus Smart to shoot less, I think somebody has finally hit home on him there, because we've got Brogdon now, we've got another season of Derek White. We don't need your offense that much, and he's been locking up. I mean, I'm sorry we slandered him a little bit about the Defensive Player of the Year award, because so far he has been incredible on that end of the floor, but that doesn't translate to stats. Like you said, averaging under 10. Jalen, Jason, and Malcolm Brogdon all close to a 30% usage rate. There's just not a lot of shots to go around otherwise, and Cleveland playing slow, giving up the 5th fewest rebounds and assists to point guards. So it's not a great matchup to take an over here for Smart.
Yep. For sure. They might need to readjust what they keep putting his props at, because that feels a bit high for what he's expected to do, just stats-wise. I'm not saying he's not a super valuable player. Like you said, he is, but we're talking about stats. So I believe he's going under in this one. So that's all the time we have for you. Looking to close out the week super hot after 13-2 over the last couple of days in the NBA with these player props. Make sure to like and subscribe. Come back and see us next week. And until we do see you next, happy betting.